Welcome to the Audacious Empires podcast. I'm your host, Leanne, business integrator and founder of Audacious Empires. Each week, my crew and I will be exploring all things building and scaling an extraordinary business. This podcast is here to share how multi-6 and 7-figure entrepreneurs can step out of daily business operations and slide into being CEO, expanding your reach and increasing your impact. Learn how to build your team the right way, create smart systems, and get the support you need to keep growing. It's time to get out of the doing and become the thought leader and world-class empire builder that you are. Hey. Welcome to this week's episode of the Audacious Empires podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about 5 of the big issues that I'm seeing successful empire builders face and how you can fix them. In my role as an OBM and an integrator, I talk to a lot of business owners and successful ones. So I'm not talking today about issues that only happen when you're in a startup phase. These are issues that I see coming from 7-figure, 8-figure businesses. And they're all really easy to fix. But I wanted to give you the insight so that if you are facing some of these, you don't feel like you're alone. Because that's another question I keep getting asked is, do you see other people that have the same problem? The answer is always yes. The likelihood is if you are facing a big issue, someone else is facing it too. And there are all different ways that you can go about fixing that issue. It is not just a you thing. So let's dive in. The first of the issues that I want to cover is the battle between impact and money. As empire builders, we want to create a big impact. Usually, this is what started us on the journey that we are on now. We have a big purpose. We want to change the world. We want to make a difference. We have a fire in our belly that fuels us. And very rarely does it have to do with us. Most of the time, it's about other people and the impact that we have on them, the world around them, the relationships that they have, the life that they live. And so with that, we feel a big responsibility. We want to do everything that we can to support them, to create that impact, to grow that impact, to help more people. And for us, it does not feel optional. We're driven. It's something we must do. If we can't do it, we feel like we're not doing the right thing. We're not living up to what we've been called to do. So how does that impact when it comes to money? What I see so often with empire builders is they have this desire to create the impact, and they know that they need money from a business perspective. The two don't always align. In fact, the two are tug-of-warring. If you're focused solely on impact, then the money side tends to fall over. If you're focused solely on money, the impact side tends to fall over, which means we're left in this place where we feel like we're in a battle all the time of having to choose. And it is frustrating. But I want you to think about it this way. When we're in this battle, our focus is split. We're either looking at impact or we're looking at money. And we see them as opposing forces. But what if we flipped it a little bit? And what if we shifted our mindset so that we looked at the two as a collaboration? The impact needs the money. So it is Batman and Robin. One can't really exist without the other. If you are focused on impact and you don't look at the money side at all, what you will find is you will burn out very quickly. Or You won't ever be able to make the kind of impact at the level that you want because you don't have the money that supports it. This isn't about greed or just revenue generation or anything like that. This is about we need to have the resources to create that impact. Otherwise, we will end up having no impact. I will say it again. If we don't consider the money and the role the money plays, the vital role the money plays on creating a big impact, we will have no impact because you will burn out. And if you burn out, you're not helping anybody. There is no business. There is no you. There is no showing up. There is no sharing what you know. There is no getting the cut through that only you can get to because there's no fuel for that fire. And then if we look at it in the other way, there is no money without the impact. That is because you're an empire builder. You don't do things in halves. You don't do things just to take the first step and run away. If there is no impact, there's no money. And that's because without the impact, you're not in it. That impact needs you. And the money will only come if that impact is being made, because that impact is what fuels you. It's what keeps you going. It's what keeps you seeing these are the opportunities in front of me. If you're in a place where all you have to focus on is money or making money, you're not going to sustain what you're doing because that's not why you started doing this. It might be part of the reason, but I bet you it's not the sole reason. And so if we don't show you the impact that you're having and you can't see it unfolding, there's going to be no money because you're not going to back it. And the money needs you. When we're looking at this battle of impact versus money, you need to flip your mindset and see it as it's not a battle. They feed each other and each is just as important. And that means we need to give each the right amount of attention. They both need our time and our commitment so that we can keep growing. And if we just focus on one, that's when things get wobbly. So remember, we need to cover both bases. Make the time to cover both bases. The second issue that I see is keeping pace. Empire builders tend to have two modes that are default. So this is in terms of without trying. One is moving too fast. The other is moving too slow. They're the default. Until we start to rationalize and until we start to really commit to changing the way that we operate, that's just the status quo. But both of these have issues and have consequences. When we are moving too fast, we lose strategic perspective and we generally lose quality. Our focus becomes on speed, or our focus becomes on immediate impact, immediate outcome. And that just adds pressure. The faster that you're moving, the more pressure that gets added, especially if it's not backed with strategy. And there's a whole lot of reasons that we move quickly. We're excited. We feel like this is urgent and it needs to be solved right now. We can see an opportunity and we don't want to miss it. There are lots of reasons. Sometimes we just feel anxious or we just want to feel like we've achieved something. So we move faster. But very rarely is the outcome as good as what it could have been if we took a breath first. And then on the flip side, if we're moving too slow, we start to lose opportunities. And when I see empires moving too slow, most of the time it has to do with a decision. They need to make a decision about something, or they're procrastinating doing something. And it's that delay that misses them opportunities, and it actually causes mental exhaustion. Because even if you're not doing it, you still know that you need to. you still know that there's a choice that needs to be made or there's a thing that needs to be done. And in your mind, in the background, that's still sitting there. And it takes that little bit of your energy. Now imagine that with 10 choices, 15, 20. That little bit of energy isn't little anymore because it's happening across all these different areas. And so then we're suffering the consequences of moving too slowly, of being unsure. So what we need to do is work out a better balance. We need to know when to move quickly and when moving a bit slower is okay. And the way that we do that is to know your core drivers. When I'm working with a lot of my clients, I usually am in on what all their goals are. And I know them as people. So I know as people what's important to them. And I know from a business perspective what's important to it. That means that when we're having conversations, I already know what the crucial pieces are here. I know where we're headed. I know where we're headed based on a business front and based on a human front. And because those are clear for me, when there's a decision that needs to be made, or when there's a really exciting opportunity that lands in our lap, or a new thought that pops into our minds and the things that could develop to be, I have something to go back to because I can measure every opportunity or every decision against these core drivers. Is this something that is moving with us in alignment with those drivers and these goals, or is it something completely off to the side? Because every time we choose something that is off to the side, it means that something's taken away from one of our core drivers. And are we okay with that? So often we can't make a decision until we understand the consequence of that decision. And sometimes the answer might be, yeah, it's actually okay in this scenario to take that opportunity and to do it and to do it quickly, because that actually feeds straight into what we're doing. But sometimes it just means you're taking away focus, energy, and time from the things that really need it now, that you'd already decided without emotion, without urgency. So the more that we can come back and have that tangible, measurable plan to go back to, you'll make far better decisions and you'll be able to keep a better pace because you won't be constantly going between fast, fast, fast or slow, slow, slow. The third thing is reinventing the wheel. This is something I hear from people that I work with a lot. I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel. I'm organized, but even if I'm organized, I still feel like I'm doing the same things that I've already done. There has to be an easier way. Usually, this stems from empire builders trying to be organized and creating processes. Now, I'm an OBM and an integrator, so I love processes. But I also know that the second that you create a process, the second that you document it, it's pretty much out of date because time has moved forward and time changes things. I also know that processes that are contained within a system have context, and context is what makes your processes long-lasting. So we're constantly reinventing the wheel and doing the same things over and over again, even though we have processes, because those processes have no context. They don't know how to function and be of use without you or the person that wrote them. So we need to start looking at what are the systems in our businesses that these processes support, because that's when we start to see systems of scale. That's when we start to see a reduction in the impact of people changing roles or leaving or coming in, the impact of that. The reason being that the systems are not built for any one person. They're built for the business as a whole. And the processes tie back into those systems. The two feed each other. And that's what makes them last longer, because they can be done by anyone with any knowledge of that role, because the context is there. They don't have to know when to use this process, why to use this process, whether it's this process or the other process. If I change something in this process, is it going to affect a different process? Will it affect a different team? What will that do to the bottom line? There are all these things that happen within processes if you leave them without a system. Put them in systems, and then the systems work together and the picture makes sense. It's that clarity that will keep your business driving forward, and you won't be reinventing the wheel anymore. The wheels are already there in motion. You might just support them and improve them. The fourth thing is being busy but not strategic. We're empire builders. We like to be busy. Usually it's because being busy makes us feel like we're closer to the impact we want to make, or we feel productive. But being busy and being strategic are not the same thing. And you might be doing a lot. Let's be honest. Most of our empire builders out there are doing a lot, but it might not be the right things. And when we're not focused on the right things, we go around in circles. At least that's what it feels like. We're never really moving forward. Sure, we're getting a lot done. We're getting through a lot. I'm not really seeing the outcome of that. And that's because we're being busy. I also want to add the context of what is busyness today might not be in a month. The things I do today that would be counted as busy things that I'm not going to see the impact for, in a month's time, they might be the right things and I'd see the impact very quickly. Therefore, in that scenario, they're not busy anymore. The difference is the timing and the priority. This is how we fix our constant lack of time, even though we're doing lots. We start to look at prioritization. Priorities fix everything. If you know what to do and when to do it and why that we have to do it in that order, in that way, you will get to your outcomes far quicker. It's methodical, it's planned out, and you won't burn out as easy. You're seeing impact faster. You're jumping a lot of hurdles when you do things in the right order. That's just how project rollout works. That's how operations work. If you prioritize properly, things run a lot smoother and you reach your goals faster. So if you're in that position, what I really want you to do is take a look at where all your time is going. Really, where's your time going? And before you go to do the next thing and go do the next thing, think about why you're doing that. What is the purpose? And what do you want that thing to get you? And is that something that's going to happen soon? Or maybe, is there something else that your time is better served doing? And then shift. It's okay to shift. It's okay to change the scope of different things. Nothing ever has to be set in stone, especially if we want to be constantly moving. Nothing ever stays still if we're moving. So you've got to be flexible, and that's okay. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you about is owning the role of CEO. Now, you might be thinking, that doesn't really sound like an issue. That just sounds like a dream. But can I tell you, I see empire builders spending way too much of their time doing other people's jobs, not being CEO. Not because they have to, but they do. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. Just because you can do it well doesn't mean that you should do it. Just because you can do it faster than someone else also doesn't mean you should do it. Not if you want to be the CEO. Getting the opportunity cost. In a business, There is only ever one CEO. There's lots of workers, there's lots of people in the organization, and they all have their part to play. There's only ever one CEO. That means you have to choose. And that means every time you do something that isn't in your CEO role, that someone else could be doing, you're choosing not to do your CEO role. Your time and energy is getting taken up by something that isn't serving you. Someone else can do it, whether they'll do it as good as you, whether they'll do it as fast as you, whether they'll do it in the same way you would. Totally different story. But the truth of the matter is only one person can be the CEO. And if that person isn't you, no one else is doing it. And what will happen to your business if they have a CEO who's there most of the time, but then sometimes just disappears? Things won't stay on track. Things won't get to where they could be as quickly as they could if they had a CEO who was leading. And every time we choose to jump into somebody else's job, someone else's task, something that someone else can do that is not a you only thing, we often desperately want to be CEO. But the reality is it's harder for us to stay there or to work our way up to staying in that role because it's a new way to operate. It's not the same as it's always been. If I'm an admin assistant, there's 4 admin assistants. There's 4 of me. There's more wiggle room for my role. If you're the CEO, there's only one of you. There's no fallback here. So we have to operate differently. To do that, you need to start looking at your capacity and look at all the things that you're doing. Can anybody else do any of those things? What are the things on there that only you can do? Nobody else. Because they are the things you need to be aiming to do all of the time. It doesn't mean that you have to be doing it all tomorrow. But you're setting yourself a baseline and you're understanding, hey, this is what my role should be. And you're starting to see the gaps and the opportunities to grow. Because if you're doing things that other people could be doing, it means that you're not spending that time looking at growth or impact or new opportunities. And none of those things will happen unless you're managing it. So as much as we can, we want to start building our team and bringing in the right people in the right roles where you're not needed. And then we equip those people to do the best that they can do. And it might look different to you. And you know what? Most of the time, the results they get are going to be better than the results you would have gotten. Because that's their jam. Your job is to be at the head of the table. And so we want to own the CEO role, but we need to understand what that really means and be practical about getting there, because it won't happen overnight, just like success doesn't happen overnight. And creating a little bit of a transition plan is okay. It's practical. It's saying, all right, I want to move forward. One step forward is still one step forward. So they're the 5 big things that I talk to my clients about, that I talk to empire builders about, that I'm seeing right now in 2024. And hopefully this episode has given you the starting points and how to overcome those issues and not stay stuck in them. Because the world needs you to be the best you that you can be. That's where the impact happens. That's when the world changing happens. I'll see you next week, everyone. Loving the Audacious Empires podcast? Drop into our DMs at Audacious Empires and say hi. We'd love to get to know you better. If you're finding these episodes useful, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for tuning in. You are why we're here.